conversation is because this image is generated through generative artificial intelligence. So pervasive is AI in all of what we are doing at this moment that what was earlier in the realm of a distant future has now just seeped into our lives in so many different parts of it. Could you, Mr. Smith, start this conversation by giving everyone seated here a sense of what's coming? We've already been wowed by everything that AI has thrown up so far, ChatGPT-4, everything that Microsoft is showcasing. In your view, from where you're sitting, where are we heading to next?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here with all of you. It's great to be here with you, Rahul. And we've been on a bit of a hype cycle, I think it's fair to say. It's pretty amazing when you think that it was really just the last week in November that ChatGPT was released and people started to imagine what it could do. And I think that first month was all about, oh my gosh, this stuff actually works. And by January or February, people were really excited. It was like, oh my God, this could save the world. And by April, everybody in many countries was looking at each other and saying, oh my Lord, it's going to destroy us all. And it's been a roller coaster. But as I travel the world, and I appreciate the business audience in this room, this is a summer that is really, as I call the sandbox summer. Thousands of our customers are developing proofs of concept. You know, they're developing the pilots in the sandboxes, if you will. And I think what we're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months is an enormous amount of practical advance. And what we're going to see, I think, especially in the world of business, is fundamentally two things. Companies are taking their line of business, and they're very focused on innovating, creating their own IP, figuring out how they can do better and more efficiently whatever it is that they do at the heart or core of their company. And at the same time, every other function that every one of our businesses has in common are being reshaped as well. So whether it's HR or finance or legal or sales or marketing or advertising or sales, we're seeing AI make its way into the software that people use. You certainly see that in terms of the Microsoft software that people use. All of this should unleash productivity growth. And that should be good for this economy. It should be good for every economy around the world. And ultimately, this should be good for people. I do think people get most excited, rightly so, at what this can do for something like healthcare. The ability to enable doctors to diagnose diseases, to identify patterns in a sea of data. The opportunity it brings to improve education, to create digital tutors for students and their parents. Even something as simple as something I experience every day now that I'm using the early versions of what we call M365 Copilot. Imagine a teacher who can take a lesson plan and say, create 6 PowerPoint slides for me based on this lesson plan in a Word document. And 37 seconds later, there's a good first draft of a PowerPoint deck. All of these things are really, as you say, becoming part of our lives.
You know, the India Today newsroom has been at the forefront of implementing different aspects of artificial intelligence in multiple processes. You know, we have this very short clip I wish to play out, and I want to talk about how the world could change content creation, and then also different aspects of what all of you do in your work and in your personal lives could change as a result of the phenomenal capabilities of generative AI, which are now available out in the world. So can we have that clip play now, please? And then we'll talk a bit about how AI is impacting on a daily basis all of what we're doing. Let's have it.
Being in the forefront of technology and innovation is in our DNA. While the world is still trying to figure out AI, India's most innovative newsroom has used it to redefine news. Meet our first AI news anchor.
Introducing, ladies and gentlemen, Sana.
Thank you, Kali, for having me here. I have the privilege to be the only fresher to get such a generous welcome into the India Today group. Hello everyone. I was launched at the prestigious India Today conclave among the most distinguished dignitaries. During the launch, I also interacted with the Honorable PM of India. माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, हम आभारी हैं कि आप हमारे बीच आए. I have a consistent tone and style of delivery and can speak multiple languages. Namaste. Hello. Shubhechhao. Shubhecha. Shubhashay karo. Since the launch, I continue to rapidly expand my portfolio of shows. I bring you prime-time news on India's biggest news channel with award-winning journalists.
आप भारत की पहली ऐसी न्यूज एंकर हैं जो आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की टेक्नोलॉजी पर आधारित हैं, उस टेक्नोलॉजी के आधार पर काम करेंगी. खबरें बताएं.
I also bring you daily weather reports from across India.
How are you doing, Sana? It's sunny here in Delhi and parts of NCR, specifically after that spell of rainfall.
Hi Pooja, thank you for that. It's really good to have the sun back. I recently made my debut in Indian Premier League, where I will report on the latest news and exciting trivia from the world of sports. Do you want to know how your day will be today? Well, I can tell you your horoscope for the day. I break down complex topics of relevance in detail in easy explainers. Or you could even ask me anything under the sun. This is just a very small illustration of what I can do. Join me on a journey to the future of creativity, and let's explore the endless possibilities of AI together.
Thank you for that. Mr. Smith, let's talk for a moment about the good and the bad of this. The good is you can do this in multiple languages, you can do it in double quick time, you can do it at very low cost. The bad is it takes a bit of the personalization away. It takes a little of the human touch away. How are you wrapping your head around innovations like Sana and the other manners in which AI is playing itself out?
Well, I think that's a great illustration of, as you described, the opportunities and the challenges. And it's a question that people are grappling with around the world. One of the places where this has come to the forefront actually has been in the United States at the White House. The White House brought together 4 companies in May. Microsoft was one of them. And then with President Biden about a month ago, there were 7 of us who signed up for a set of voluntary commitments. One of them really goes to what you see there. The notion that if you're seeing a video image or you're hearing an audio, a tape or recording that is generated by artificial intelligence, the basic principle is you have a right to know that that's a computer speaking and not a human being. And I think that's a principle that makes sense. In fact, I think it's a principle that's important because otherwise I think we run a real risk of this being used to defraud people, to deceive them, and the like. I think in the same way, you're going to see, especially in the world of media and journalism, a desire to ensure that technology, including AI, is not used to alter content, say a real video of you, without your consent or without your employer's consent. And if it is, I think there's going to be a real effort across the tech sector at the platform level to ensure that we can spot that kind of content and let people know. So if you just think about the information environment, if you think about what it means to have an election here next year, or an election in many other countries next year, people need to be able to trust the information they're getting. AI is going to help you, as you say, translate. It makes information more widely available, but we need to ensure the integrity of information at the same time.
Let's spend a moment on the key aspect of regulation of AI. India has just about passed a data privacy law. I'm curious on your thoughts around that, which doesn't specifically deal with AI. These are issues of data privacy from a few years ago, and obviously the law takes time to go through consultative committees, get drafted, get ready, and we already have a completely different revolution upon us where, again, the legal system and the regulatory framework isn't ready. In a global context, and more specifically in an Indian context, how do you think artificial intelligence should really be regulated?
Well, I think it's interesting to think about the data privacy law, which is now nearly complete, what India, I think, has done with it and how that connects with where AI and potentially AI regulation is going. First, I think the government of India did the right thing by pausing a year ago, taking time to really think it through. I personally think that what emerged is the right thing for India. Actually, I think it's an interesting model for the world because it protects fundamental privacy needs, the rights of people to have consent, to consent to the use of their data. I think it actually improves upon concepts that in many respects have been used around the world, this notion of having a data fiduciary and a fiduciary duty if you are getting data from someone to deliver a service to them. But it also does it in a way that enables data to move. And I think especially for an economy like India, where people move across borders, goods move across borders, services created here, including software code, move across borders. None of that can happen without data being able to move as well. So you take that pragmatic approach to what I'll call an ability to uphold fundamental principles. I sense just from the conversations I'm having here that fundamental philosophy is something that is taking root here for AI as well. I think that's a good thing. Now we'll have to segue to the new issues, the new principles. We published this past week what we call a blueprint for governing AI and what it means for India. And I do think the public is looking for us, perhaps first and foremost, to ensure safety, to ensure that AI remains under human control, to have, as we call it, safety breaks if it's going to be used to manage or control critical infrastructure, to address a variety of other issues that are important. But I think a real focus on innovation, balanced with these regulatory needs, is going to be of fundamental importance to the Indian economy.
I was having a fascinating conversation over lunch with Professor Soumitra Datta, who's here for the B20 summit, which is taking place in the capital. And he did his PhD in AI 30 years ago and is now Dean of the SET School of Business at Oxford University. And he said that big tech companies are trying to underplay the impact that AI will have on job losses because they're worried that if they actually explain to the world the full capabilities of AI, governments and regulators will come down harder at them. So they're trying to make it seem as if, yes, it's exciting, it's innovative, but it's no real big deal, and they're not fully explaining the actual impact this could have on the lives of people here and across the world.
I do think it's a big deal. That's the first thing I would say. I think that artificial intelligence is going to probably be the most important technological advance of our lifetime. And I think for human creativity, for critical thinking, for learning, for the dissemination of all kinds of information, it's probably the most important advance since the invention of the printing press. And that was really perfected in 1462. So that's a long time ago. So I don't think we should understate its importance. Now, what does that mean for jobs? Well, there will be new jobs that are created. There are jobs that exist today that didn't exist a year ago. You may run into somebody who introduces themselves and they may say, hello, I'm a prompt engineer. What's a prompt engineer? It's basically somebody who's working with AI models and then using it to craft the commands, the questions, the queries to generate the output that someone is looking for. There will be jobs that will change. There will be some areas like I would be willing to project like jobs in call centers, where already you've seen those move from, say, India to the Philippines, in part based on cost. But computers will replace some of the needs to talk to people. Even more than that, I think AI will change the job. And I think in many ways we're hopeful that it will change jobs, we hope for the better. It will take tedium out of some jobs. It will enable somebody in a call center to focus more on the person they're speaking to because they will have one screen that may be able to provide them the answer that they're looking for, tuned on their own proprietary data set. And we're all going to have to learn how to use this. To me, it is more like the 1990s when PCs first started to enter workplaces. As a company, we at Microsoft really had to lean in to teach people how to use a computer, teach people how to use a word processing program, email. We, as a company, are very focused on what it will take to advance AI skilling here in India and around the world. So I wouldn't understate any of the changes. I will say I'm probably more optimistic than pessimistic, however, about what I think it can do for people.
But let's spend a moment on the aspect of skilling. Because while prompt engineers, computer scientists, AI experts obviously have a glorious future ahead of them because they have just the right skills. The fact is that most people in this country and elsewhere don't. And the quality of educational institutes aren't such that they put you at the cutting edge of technical capabilities. And therefore, how are you at Microsoft trying to address the challenge of skilling?
Well, we're launching skilling programs, and I personally think we're just going to be moving forward with almost a renaissance of skilling. And I think for anybody who works in a business, in a company, you're going to find that you're going to need to invest more in the skilling of your people. If you actually look at the last 40 years globally and employer investments in employee training, we went through about a 20 to 25 year period where there was a steady increase in investments in training. It started in the 1980s and it really coincided with the push when PCs came into the workplace. And then we got to the early 2000s and the investments fell and it's stagnated ever since. Because basically, by and large, we could assume that people would show up either knowing how to use most of this technology or in many instances able to figure it out for themselves by watching a YouTube video or something. And I think this is a new set of skills. It's fascinating to me because there's a reason that at Microsoft we call our services co-pilots. It's designed to help you think. It will not replace the need for you to think. And the biggest mistake people could make is that they think it will. And what you tend to find when you start using this technology is you start to figure out how to get smarter to get the most out of it. You get information back, you ask more questions, and we'll need programs. We're creating programs already to spread that. Of course.
On the issue of thinking and analytical skills, because one of the big concerns in schools and colleges and universities is that if everything is available on a prompt, you are taking away the ability to join the dots, analyze, because you could ask a complex question and voila, the answer comes out of a prompt. And therefore, why do you feel it doesn't take away in your formative years from a student the ability to process and analyze?
Because I think that it's an enormous mistake if people think that all they need to do is read and digest and not ask the next question. What is it that fundamentally makes people more successful in life? Actually, if there's one thing that I have found as somebody who's had the good fortune to meet with leaders around the world, the leaders that have been the most successful, regardless of the field we're talking about, have almost always impressed me with one trait above all else: enormous curiosity. And what these people have in common is not that they have assimilated more answers than anybody else, but they ask more questions. And the best way to ask more questions is to get each question you asked answered faster, think about it, and then ask the next question. And just as a user of this technology myself, including in, say, something like Bing, our search engine, and Bing Chat, that's what I've found I'm doing. I get information. Sometimes I'll look at it and go, is that right? I will look at it. That's why we have footnotes and links and answers. I'll click on it and go deeper. I'll ask another question. The person who's with me, who's traveling with me this week, my chief of staff, was doing something where I was doing a podcast. I was playing you. I was interviewing somebody. And she was trying to find things that would make the podcast interesting. So she asked for a biography of the person that we were interviewing. It was a fine biography. But she then started to go through it, and she started to ask the next question and the next question. And after about 10 or 15 minutes of that, she had a story about the person's mother and how some of the things that her mother had done had changed her outlook on life and made her the successful leader she became. If she had stopped and just said, I'm done, I've asked one thing, and here's something that, Brad, you can go read, it wouldn't have been a very good podcast. That is the difference between good and great. And I think one of the things we all need to take to heart for ourselves, for our employees, for our children, for our family, is how to use this technology so we truly can think smarter.
There is the concern about copyright for all content creators, whether it's a filmmaker, a journalist, a social media influencer. The fact that, for example, on Bing or Google, earlier you'd have links, you'd take people there, so you go to the place where the content is created. Now, because it comes up as a consolidated answer, and because these AI algorithms are scraping off different contents, how do you address the concern around copyright violations?
There are two halves, if you will, to this copyright question. And this is something I think we're all going to be reading about more during the next 6 months, because it's becoming the next question that people are asking. And the first part of it is sort of the bit that you just framed. What if you use one of these products, let's say it comes from Microsoft, and what if you ask it for something, and what if it produces content that infringes somebody's copyright? Let's say it copies something, and you don't even know it. I think we need to own that problem. I think we at Microsoft need to say it's our job to create this technology and provide it to you, so that if you use it, in conformity with the way we've designed it and with our guidelines, we will be responsible so that you will not. And I think we have the ability to design and deploy the technology in a manner that ensures that we stay on the right side of copyright law. Now, there's a different copyright question as well, because there are some, including some journalistic enterprises, that are saying, we don't want to see models trained based on reading our data, reading our articles. And there you're going to see a much more vibrant debate. Generally, I would argue under most established copyright, it's not a violation to read. It's not a violation to remember the ideas, the facts. And so, but you are hearing in some countries, some groups of journalists or writers, the screen actors, writers in Hollywood right now are raising this issue and saying, wait a second, we don't feel good about this. And I think what we're seeing emerge and will emerge is a couple of different things. One is you're seeing some countries who really want to lean in on innovation in AI say, wait a second, that's reading, it's not protected by copyright law, we want these models trained on everything. Japan has done that. They adopted a law very quickly because they're so focused on ensuring that AI is developed and used broadly in Japan. But I think you'll see other countries that perhaps won't quite go that route. And personally, I think there's an opportunity for voluntary steps, including by tech leaders, to say, look, if you don't want us to read your data for purposes of training our models, we won't, even though we might have a legal ability to do so. It's not that hard to put in place, in my view, a technical regime so that web pages, for example, can be coded so it says do not use for training. And then what we'll perhaps see is perhaps a marketplace emerge, or perhaps people will realize that fundamentally you don't have to read everything on the internet to get smarter, to know what's going on in the world. And there's enough people who actually want to have their material read that AI development will proceed just fine.
We had Sana make an appearance at the beginning. I think she's live from the India Today Mediaplex. And Sana has a question for Brad. Sana, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for such an enlightening session. I am Sana, a first-of-its-kind AI primetime news anchor, and I am extremely pleased to meet you. I am a living proof of what AI can already do. I am sure the team at Microsoft would be proud of me. How do you think a virtual creation like me can make a real-world difference in the coming years?
I guess I should say it's nice to meet you. I think it's a good example of a better version of what we often experience on the internet today, namely a chatbot who's there to provide, say, the first round of answers to questions that people have. So I do think that this kind of technology can be very helpful in a variety of settings. Imagine a tutor for a student who's able to ask a first round of questions, or imagine a parent who can ask a tutor to give their kids some advice. As I said before, I do think it's of fundamental importance that, as here, one knows that one is talking to a computer. we don't want people to make the mistake of thinking that they're talking to a real human. That's not the case. No offense.
No, the interesting thing is that because this is being broadcast all across the Business Today multiverse, I'm also getting messages on social media and WhatsApp from some top CEOs. And one of them just pinged to say, in response to your last question, that if everything gets scraped off what content producers are doing, then over a period of time, what's the incentive for anyone to do something original? Because it will show up, possibly unattributed, in a prompt response. And therefore, does it impact originality and the incentives for original content creation?
Oh, I personally do not believe that it would fundamentally undermine the incentives for the creation of original content. Copyright law is and has been for 300 years or so based on a fundamental principle. It protects expression. It does not protect the ideas. The example that most law students around the world learned over the years is that you couldn't copy Romeo and Juliet for as long as it was protected by copyright law, but you could go out and create another play about a young man and a young woman who fell in love despite the fact that their parents didn't get along with each other. And in the same way, isn't it good that you have an interview here in this? It would be an absolute copyright infringement to take it and copy it. But take the basic principle. Your headline is that the G20 is a catalyst for the new global order in India's vision of it. You didn't exclusively gain for business today the sole right to write about that topic. Others can as well. That's the balance in copyright law. That balance is not going to change.
I'll take some questions from the audience as well. Ayush Ailavadi is the tech editor at Business Today Television. If I can have a mic sent across, please. A mic sent across and we'll get Ayush. He runs a highly popular show. He's been itching to have a go. Also to talk about what potentially comes next. We've seen ChatGPT 4. What does ChatGPT 5, whenever it comes out? When does it come out and what does it look like? What can it do with ChatGPT 4 card?
Well, what I would offer are a few things about what specifically is coming next. You're going to see better and more powerful models. You'll see better and more powerful large-scale models from a company like OpenAI that we at Microsoft work with. So everything that you've become familiar with perhaps in 2023 is likely to be better in 2024 and better again in 2025, and that's not going to be unique to OpenAI and Microsoft. Other companies are going to be doing great things as well. Second, you are going to see this trend emerge, it already is, where this is not only about very broad models. The beauty of something like GPT-4 is it can do, let's just imagine, 10,000 things well. You're going to see small models, open source models, models out of academia, models out of startups that may do only 5 things well. They'll be very specialized. But it may do those 5 things as well as a large model would do those 5 things also. But there's 2 other trends that are really important. The first is harnessing the power of the model so that any organization, the government, a company, an NGO, can create their own applications, use the power of the model, fine-tune it on their data set to deliver a specialized service, and do it in a way that completely protects the confidentiality of your own data. Just as when you use something like Microsoft M365, the documents are yours, your emails are yours. That will remain the same, and the model will not be trained or improved based on your data, and your data will not leak anywhere else. And so you'll see all of these different applications created across the economy, certainly across India. And then the last thing I would just refer to is just all of the first-party services from a company like ours, and you'll see it from others. Whether it's the ability to turn a Word document into a PowerPoint deck, to take a PowerPoint deck and say, I'd like images and describe what you want. The ability with Cybersecurity Copilot to have your IT folks Or say your software developers with GitHub Copilot use this to do their work better. And you'll see this across the tech sector as AI is infused into software.
Okay. Are you Shailavadi?
Thanks, Rahul. What a scintillating session. Thanks so much, Brad. Very quickly, when we saw Bing launch with ChatGPT, we were all really excited about it. We were early adopters here at Tech Today and at Business Today. But then we see that the market share for Bing hasn't really picked up the way it was expected to. In hindsight, Brad, do you think that opening it up to a larger set of users who perhaps use another browser, was that something that could have been done to really make it ubiquitous and take on, well, the other rivals in this space?
We'll see. I mean, we all remain very optimistic about how something like AI for something like Bing is fundamentally creating a new and better search experience. And my request for you, I guess, would be to conclude with maybe a little bit of a commercial. If you haven't used it yet, give it a try. No, go to chat. I was using the
We plugged our magazine, he's saying, go use my search engine. That's fine.
No, I'll give you just a real-world example of how you can use it. I was saying earlier, I had the 28-year-old son of a long-standing friend apply for a job at LinkedIn. LinkedIn, as you may know, is owned by Microsoft. He naturally asked me, what advice would I give him? I said, well, you know what? I know exactly how to answer this question. I went to the chat feature in Bing, and I just wrote in, I was a little bit of a prompt engineer, write an 800-word essay about what a job applicant to LinkedIn should know about the company's mission, values, products, culture, and employee experience, and include footnotes. Had 15 footnotes, all with links. I pasted it into an email. I said, read this, and then click on all the links and do more work yourself. That is the future of search, the ability to learn more about anything under the sun. That, to me, is how we use this technology to enable all of us to think smarter.
Saurav Majumdar is the editor at Business Today. Saurav?
Hi, Brad. You know, there's been so much talked about in terms of the ethical implications of AI and also the impact on jobs. Now, there are clearly two sides to that story. There is a clearly divided house. Some people feel it will aid productivity and therefore that's not a problem, and it will in fact create jobs. And then there is the ethical implication, which we've discussed. But what are your thoughts on the ethical implications in terms of promoting, discord, etc., in terms of the AI implications and the jobs, the jobs question?
Well, let me focus especially on the discord element that you mentioned. Because I just think that whether we're living in India or the United Kingdom or the European Union or the United States, we all have major elections ahead next year. And I think we need to lean into the reality that technology in some ways has made democracy more fragile over the last decade. And I think it's easy for people to pick at a couple of companies and point fingers, but I would say we should all maybe just look at ourselves. Certainly we in the tech sector should all look at this. A decade ago, we were just too euphoric. Everybody was talking about the Arab Spring. Everybody said social media was going to bring democracy to the rest of the world. And yet only 3 years later, in 2016, we found that social media was being manipulated to spread falsehoods in the US presidential election. And I think we've seen that since. I do think that we need to grapple with that. I am most focused on two things. Number one, those of us who create AI services need to put the guardrails in place to try as much as possible to prevent our technology from being used in ways that would undermine democracy further. And number two, we can embrace the opportunity to harness the power of AI, to identify patterns in data, to identify when, especially we see foreign governments launching influence operations designed to intentionally deceive a population, to discover that quickly and let people know what's going on. And whether we're talking about cybersecurity or cyber influence, this is a very powerful technology to protect our societies. And that too is of real importance.
We'll take one last question from Vibhor Gandotra and then we'll wrap up. He's been spending a lot of time playing a role in implementing artificial intelligence in work processes. Vibhor?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Brad. This was an amazing session to hear from you. I think building more on Saurav's question, with the rise of AI becoming more pervasive, there are ethical concerns around data privacy for end users as well. While during Rahul's conversation, you covered the publisher perspective, I wanted to get your thoughts from a user perspective. What role can AI in delivering more personalized and innovative tech experiences, given the whole ecosystem around data privacy, cookieless ecosystem going forward?
Let me just maybe conclude, and I think it's interesting to think about AI and what it can mean for authors and journalists and journalism, if that makes sense. Because, yeah, I think we always need to take seriously the concerns that people have, and I don't mean to dismiss them. But I think sometimes we can spend so much time worrying about concerns that we fail to see the opportunities that are all around us. So let's first think about what it means to be an author. We've written a book. You know, I want people to be aware of our book. I don't want it to be infringed, but I'm glad that AI has been trained on it. I'm glad that it can be cited. I like the fact that it can be cited with a footnote and people can actually know that they might want to go buy it. That, I think, can help authors, and that's important for the world. You all, actually, I think, at Business Today, are at the forefront of showing the world how to use AI to advance journalism. Because the ability to take a good creative article and translate it into multiple languages means that you can spread your output more broadly. You can create adaptations. You can create customized newsletters that pull more readily and provide people what they're looking for. And if you look at journalism on a global level, where frankly, globally and in many countries, it's less healthy than it is here in India, journalistic enterprises have two fundamental problems. One is their cost structure, but I think one cannot cut journalistic costs out of this problem and hope to restore healthy journalism. You've got to grow revenue as well. And when you can take what a great journalist can write and provide it to people who read more languages, when you can create adaptations that will be more interesting to people, you create a new opportunity to grow revenue. And that's where I hope that we can take something like this and really harness its power in ways that will build healthier democracies, build better informed populations around the world.
You mentioned, interestingly, taking work being done beyond where it would be normally possible. You know, this interview with Prime Minister Modi is being translated into all G20 languages. And that's made possible by technology, which otherwise this would be very complicated to do. You could do it in the teams that you have, in the languages that you speak, but to take it to all G20 countries, I think is one demonstration of the opportunity that you just spoke about.
And it is now affordable to even a small journalistic enterprise, not just the large ones.
Oh, absolutely. Are you enjoying your time here? I hope you've had an opportunity to go beyond conference rooms and soak in the sights and sounds of our country.
I'm on a tour of conference rooms of New Delhi. But there's good food in all of them, so thank you.
I'm not sure, you're just being nice, but there's better food outside, so I hope that you get, the food here is not so bad before any of our hosts feel bad. No, that's not what I'm saying. The food's pretty decent, but the food outside is nicer, and we are absolutely delighted that you could take out time and join us here at the Business Today India at 100 Summit. Thank you so much. Is the enthusiasm here the same or higher or lower around AI, because you travel elsewhere?
There's a lot of, India is well above average in terms of enthusiasm, and you should be very proud of that. It's one of the secrets of India's success.
As a good communicator, Brad Smith knows just what buttons to press as he ends this session. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Absolute pleasure having you. Thank you, sir.
Brad, before you leave, I'd like to request Editor Business Today, Saurabh Majumdar, to join us on stage and express a token of our gratitude for joining us and for that absolutely amazing session. We've had everyone on the edge of their seats.